What's going on, Dolphins fans? It's Connor from the Dolphins Dive, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator search, and I'm going to go over the list of the candidates, who I think's the best, and who I'd like the Dolphins to hire. So, without further ado, we're going to hop right into today's video, starting with the interviews the Dolphins have reportedly taken for the defensive coordinator position. The first one that got reported was Brandon Staley, former Los Angeles Chargers head coach, and then formerly Rams defensive coordinator. He does have a tie with Mike McDaniel, as he's a part of the whole, I forget what it's called, like QB, whatever. There is like a whole coaching group that's within each other. They probably all have the same agent. So he's got a correlation to Brandon Staley. And the thing with Brandon Staley is he runs the same scheme as Vic Fangio, as he was with him in Denver. So he'd kind of be a carbon copy scheme in terms of what we just saw. Obviously, every defensive coordinator does things a little differently, and that's kind of what the Dolphins are looking for from Vic Fangio, someone different that kind of fits the culture a little better, as the players clearly did not like Vic Fangio. So Staley comes with the same scheme, so you could kind of plug and play there. And then obviously a good relationship with Mike McDaniel as well as Jalen Ramsey, who's on the record saying that Brandon Staley was the best defensive coordinator he ever had. When I think Staley was his DC, so obviously he's going to say that, but still. And called him a genius, and he loved everything about Staley. So that's a good start. Obviously, Staley's had his struggles with the Chargers. He was the head coach, but I think he also called defensive plays, and they were pretty booty cheeks on defense. Except against the one game against the Dolphins, he did lock us up. He put a good game plan together. And maybe that's why he wasn't as good of a defensive coordinator as a head coach, is because he had so much more on his plate, so he couldn't make as good of game plans. There's really no way of knowing unless you have some more background information. Good thing is the Dolphins do have Ronaldo Hill on the staff, who was with Staley in LA, so maybe he can get some more insight on how much input Staley had in the game plan, and maybe with more time freed up to just focusing on the defense, he'd be able to exceed more. So that's good information to potentially have on Brandon Staley, who, when he was the Rams DC, they had the best defense in the league. They were first in points allowed and first in yards per game, which are the two biggest metrics you want to see from a defense. So his 1 year as a DC was very good, but it's obviously a very small sample size. But he's an intriguing candidate, and I think if he does well in the interview and sells McDaniel, I will be comfortable with the hire. Obviously, there's a little bit of red flags with the whole, obviously, lack of success with LA, but that was also as a head coach. Next candidate that the Dolphins have reportedly interviewed, there's probably more that they're interviewing that haven't been made public, as they don't need to make these interviews public, but Bobby Bobick, I don't know how to pronounce his name exactly, he's the linebackers coach for the Bills, and he's a very intriguing candidate. He's 40 years old. On Twitter, some people have been putting out some video clips of him speaking, and he speaks like you'd want your DC to speak. He's very intelligent. You like how he talks. He was talking about linebackers and how he tries to not view their numbers and watch the tape, basically, and kind of comparing how their most recent linebackers are undersized, but they play big, and that's kind of what you look for in a linebacker. So he was saying all the right things. Obviously, most coaches, when you hear them speak, you like what they say, but who knows how it gets put together. He's been on the Bills staff since 2017, starting all the way from an assistant defensive backs coach to safeties coach to linebackers coach. So staying within a staff and still earning roles, I think, is a good indicator of you as a coach. So that looks good on him. He would probably bring... See, nowadays, defenses are all very similar. All teams basically base out of nickel. Vic Fangio, and what we've seen in the past in Miami, has based out of an odd front defense, meaning 3 down linemen, 4 linebackers, obviously 2 outside linebackers, where Bobick would mainly base out of an even front, 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers. So there's a small different philosophy, but I mean, a lot of teams nowadays, they run too high. They all mix and match their coverages, and they all can run a little bit of match coverage. So there's no telling what kind of defense he's going to bring. Maybe he would have run the defense that we've had here, or he'd install kind of the defense that's run in Buffalo, which is a lot of too high, cover 2, some man coverage, a little bit of everything. But he'd probably have the linebackers playing at a very high level, which nowadays linebackers have been underappreciated, but the best teams have the best linebackers. You look at San Francisco with Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, the Ravens with Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith. Like, the good teams have good linebackers, and I'm sure he would get good linebacker play. So those are the 2 known interviewed guys. I think a fan favorite might included the guy that I do want to get the head coaching or defensive coordinator job for the Miami Dolphins is Anthony Campanelli, who's our current linebackers coach. Obviously, the Hard Knocks clips speak for themselves. He's an electric guy. He's a great leader of men. An Italian stallion from New Jersey, as a fellow New Jersey, and I appreciate that. But my biggest intrigue with him is the ability to potentially run multiple schemes, which are the best defenses. The Ravens right now with Mike McDonald, the biggest note about him is that like week to week, he does something different. And we saw that firsthand in Miami with Brian Flores as our head coach. Brian Flores was a tremendous defensive mind that was bad at hiring an offensive staff, if we're keeping it real. I also didn't like his culture, but his defense was great, and week to week it was a different game plan, which just keeps the offense on their toes, and you can really expose some offenses. So I'm hoping Campanelli would be able to, because Campanelli was here with Brian Flores, then here with Boyer, and then here with Fangio. And surviving coaching turnover, in my eyes, is also an indicator of you being a good coach. So, let alone, I think he's a good coach. The players love him. He's a great leader. And then he's learned from Flores as well as he's learned from Fangio. And if he can kind of tie those schemes together, kind of take a week-by-week approach, and one week come blitz heavy like Flores did, and the next week kind of only rush for Fangio coverage kind of scheme, like that has so much potential to be a very good defense if he's able to implement that. Obviously, he's never called plays at the pro level, so there's no way of knowing, but obviously that's what the whole interview process is for. I'd have the utmost faith if the Dolphins were to hire him that he might be able to execute that, and I'd be very excited for that because I think that is the biggest way to have success in this league defensively is to keep offenses on their toes, coming out with like basically a different game plan each week, which is kind of what New England's known for. And I think Campanelli, learning under Flores as well as Fangio, two of the best defensive minds in all of football, has a lot of potential as a defensive coach, but obviously he's not proven as he hasn't done it. So those are the three main candidates in my eyes. Like I said, there's been nothing else announced on the other people we've interviewed, but some other names that are fun to maybe throw out there. Obviously, Mike Vrabel. There's only 2 head coaching jobs left. It doesn't seem like it's going to Vrabel or Belichick. And obviously another name, Bill Belichick, if we somehow get him as a defensive coordinator. I don't think it fits what the Dolphins are looking for because we moved on from Fangio. Although I think Fangio also wanted to leave, so it's a little bit of both. But I think those both would be tremendous defensive coordinator jobs. Although I seem unlikely. Outside of those guys, I can't really think of anyone. Maybe Ronaldo Hill, internal as well, coming from the Fangio scheme, was the DC of the Chargers and came over with Vic. But yeah, like I said, it's hard to know because there's so many different guys that could potentially. Leslie Frazier's another guy if they want to go from the Bills tree. Obviously not the Bills tree because Leslie Frazier's an OG, but that kind of defense. But like I said, that's all I've got. Comment down below. Who is your favorite so far of the guys that you want to see the Dolphins hire? Like the video to help the channel grow. It means so much to me. And until next time, I'll catch you. Fins up.